Millions of years ago, long before skyscrapers, cars or technology, humans were just another species struggling to survive. No weapons of steel, no warm houses, no supermarkets, just raw nature, unforgiving, merciless and wild. This is the story of how prehistoric humans fought against extinction and step by step built the foundation of civilization. Our story begins in the harsh, dry lands of East Africa. Imagine a world where water is scarce, the sun beats down relentlessly, and danger lurks around every corner. This was the reality for our ancestors, who were just one more species trying to survive in a world dominated by giant animals. Their bodies were not very different from modern humans, but their minds were just beginning to develop. They lived in small groups, constantly on the move, searching for food and shelter. One of the biggest challenges they faced was the lack of weapons. Early humans were not yet advanced enough to create sharp tools, leaving them defenseless against predators. To protect themselves, they had to rely on their wit and their ability to climb trees, escaping the jaws of death. As time passed, they began to use stones as weapons, a rudimentary form of defense that helped them hunt small animals and defend themselves against larger threats. Another challenge was the lack of shelter. Our ancestors had to contend with extreme weather conditions and dangerous animals. They sought refuge in caves or made simple shelters out of branches and leaves. But as the seasons changed, so did their need for protection. Gradually, they learned to build more durable and sophisticated shelters, which gave them a sense of security and allowed them to better adapt to their environment. But perhaps the greatest challenge was the scarcity of food. Our ancestors lived in a world where food was not always available, and starvation was a constant threat. They hunted small animals and gathered fruits and vegetables. But this was not enough to ensure their survival. As the climate changed, some regions became drier and food became even more scarce. Faced with this challenge, humans began to migrate in search of new territories with more resources. They traveled long distances on foot, following herds of animals or the course of rivers, always looking for a better place to live. Throughout their journey, they encountered other human groups, and together they learned and shared knowledge about the world around them. They discovered new food sources, new ways of making tools, and new strategies for hunting. As they moved from one place to another, humans began to explore and understand the world around them. They learned to predict the weather, track animals, and navigate through forests and mountains. This growing body of knowledge allowed them to adapt to different environments and survive in the face of all the challenges they encountered. And so, over the course of many millennia, humans went from being a small, weak species to becoming the dominant species on the planet. They had weapons, shelter, and food. But most importantly, they had knowledge, and with it, they laid the foundation for the rise of civilization. The story of human development is a story of overcoming, adaptation, and resilience. It's a story that reminds us that no matter how difficult the circumstances may be, life finds a way to not only survive, but also to thrive and leave its mark on the world.
What if I told you we were wrong about the Stone Age? What if I told you it wasn't just a time of dumb cavemen who lived in caves, had no clothes, and used stones as tools? I mean, they did that, but there was more to life then. There was beauty, wonder, and even excitement. Imagine a world filled with towering mammoths, roaring saber-toothed cats, and giant birds that could snatch you up with their claws. A world where humans were just another animal trying to survive. Early humans back then were fragile. Our ancestors from that time were small, just 4 feet tall, skinny as twigs, and twice as flexible. They didn't have the big brains that we have today, but they had something else: sharper instincts. They were incredibly agile, strong, and fast, able to run for long periods of time without getting tired. They climbed trees like agile acrobats and used rocks and sticks as tools. They lived in small groups, moved from place to place following the herds of animals, and slept under the stars with the woolly mammoths for company. The Stone Age man had no fancy weapons, no castles or kingdoms, just the raw power of his will to survive. Every sunrise was a new battle, a fight to find food, a desperate bid to avoid predators, and a constant struggle to stay alive another night. They weren't the kings of the earth. They were prey. But here's the twist. Despite all this, they weren't stupid. They were smart, curious, and quick learners. They watched the animals around them, learned their habits, and used their intelligence to outsmart them. They made tools from sharp rocks and pointed sticks, weapons that may seem primitive to us, but were deadly to their prey. The Stone Age wasn't just a time of hardship and struggle. It was also a time of beauty, wonder, and excitement. Imagine seeing a woolly mammoth up close, feeling its massive body shaking the ground as it walks, or watching a saber-toothed cat stalk its prey with deadly grace. The Stone Age wasn't just a time of danger. It was a time of adventure, a time when humans first became explorers, venturing into the unknown, discovering new lands and facing the challenges of the wild. They weren't kings, but they were survivors. They weren't conquerors, but they were learners. And in the end, maybe that's what made them the most powerful force of all. Humans are the only species on Earth with a natural instinct to kill. But why? For most of human history, our species has been both hunter and prey. For hundreds of thousands of years, survival meant becoming hunters. With sharpened sticks and primitive spears, humans hunted deer, bison, and even mammoths. But it wasn't easy. A single hunt could last days. Failure meant starvation. Success meant life for the entire tribe. But humans weren't just hunters. They were also hunted. Lions, hyenas, and saber-toothed cats stalked them. To stay alive, humans had to think faster than predators. They learned teamwork, stealth, and strategy. And that's why we have a natural instinct to kill. It's in our DNA. As hunter-gatherers, humans roamed the earth following the herds, surviving on what they could find to eat. This lifestyle made us the most adaptable species on the planet. We could, and still can, survive anywhere from the freezing cold of the Arctic Circle to the scorching Sahara Desert. We can feast like kings on a diet of wild game and berries, or starve, and turn to eating insects and grubs. Humans are the ultimate survivors. So let's take a moment to appreciate all the amazing things that humans can do. We can build shelters out of natural materials, use tools, control fire, develop complex language, and even plan for the future. We're also capable of great acts of kindness, bravery, and love. Just think about all the times that you've helped someone in need, stood up for what's right, or shown compassion to a stranger. These are all examples of the amazing things that humans can do. But let's not forget about the darker side of human nature. We're also capable of terrible things like violence, destruction, and hatred. Throughout history, there have been countless wars, famines, and diseases that have wiped out entire civilizations. And even today, there are still people who go hungry, who live in fear, and who are persecuted for their beliefs. The world can be a dark and dangerous place, but it's up to each of us to decide what we want to be a part of. Will you be a force for good or a force for evil? The choice is yours. So let's take a moment to reflect on our strengths and weaknesses, our hopes and dreams, our joys and sorrows. Let's remember that we're all human beings, and that means that we're all capable of great things. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Humans have been around for about 300,000 years. For most of that time, we lived in small groups, barely scraping by. Then came a discovery so powerful, it changed everything. It was not the wheel, the concept of zero, or even agriculture. It was fire. The ability to control fire gave our ancestors the edge they needed to flourish. At first, it was just a way to keep warm in the freezing ice age, but then they realized something else. Fire could keep predators away. With a burning branch in one hand and a spear in the other, early humans could now defend themselves and their food. And when that food was cooked, it was easier to find and eat, providing more energy for the growing human brain. For the first time, humans could actually thrive. Around the fire, humans would tell stories to each other. They'd share knowledge and form bonds. Out of this social interaction came the first sparks of civilization. Here's what I mean. When humans first started working together to build a fire, someone had to lead the effort. Someone had to say, "Hey, gather some sticks. I'll get some rocks and water." This required language, planning, and cooperation. None of those things are easy to do. You need a big brain to make a fire. But making a fire also required a social structure. Not everyone could be the leader. Someone had to collect the food, someone had to guard it, and someone had to cook it. This division of labor led to the first villages, the first tools, and eventually the first cities. All because someone figured out how to harness fire. Now, some people believe that fire was a gift from the gods, a blessing given to humans so we could learn how to control our world. Others believe that fire was just an accident, a bolt of lightning that struck a dry tree and burned it to the ground. Maybe it was both. Maybe divine intervention sparked the first fire, and then humans took it from there. Who really knows? But what we do know is this: fire was a gift no matter how it started. It gave humans the ability to thrive. It allowed us to spread across the planet and start civilizations. For that, we should all be grateful. So the next time you see a fire, take a moment to appreciate its power. Remember, this is the greatest discovery in human history. The next time you see a fire, remember humans used to sit around fires and marvel at the flames just like you are right now. They wondered the same things you're wondering. What's beyond those flames? How can I make it bigger? Will it burn my house down? Humans have always been fascinated by fire. And if you're anything like me, you can't look away. It's the same reason why